Tonight on Reporting Scotland. Police in Hamburg continue to search for a man from Inverness who went missing during a stag weekend in the city.
Just please let somebody know you're safe. Please come back and be best man at Amesbury.
Also on the programme, a fishing boat which sank in Loch Fyne is to be left where it lies, but efforts are to be made to recover the bodies of 2 crewmen who died. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn campaigns on the borders and says the economy is failing people right across Scotland. Aberdeen City Council announces plans to axe 370 jobs, and there could be more to come.
It's not an easy one.
And after victory over France in the Six Nations, Scotland's top scorer says he believes they can beat any team at Murrayfield. Good evening. Family and friends of a man from Inverness who went missing during his brother's stag weekend in Germany say they're growing more and more concerned for his well-being. The search is continuing for 29-year-old Liam Colgan, who was last seen in a Hamburg bar in the early hours of Saturday. Ian McInnes can tell us more.
The trip to Germany had begun in good spirits, but just hours after this picture was taken, Liam Colgan became separated from the group. He's not been seen since. Searches have been continuing today in the city.
The police were informed early afternoon on Saturday. We had a search party go out to look around the streets to see if he had stumbled anywhere around there, perhaps. We searched hospitals. Further to that, we decided to make a Facebook group called Help Find Liam Colgan.
Keen musician Liam is due to be his brother's best man in just 3 weeks' time. Friends say his disappearance is totally out of character.
Knowing Liam and knowing the sort of guy that he is, there was this immediate worry right from first thing in the morning when we realised he hadn't come back to the hotel. It just wasn't like him. So we went back and visited a number of the bars that we were in. We found the last bar that he'd been seen in. We spoke with the barmaids there who seemed to remember us and seemed to remember Liam leaving just before we did on his own, and that was the last time that he was spotted.
Friends are overwhelmed at what's happened.
Just shell-shocked really, because it's completely out of character, and yeah, just really concerned and just worried like everybody is.
Local police say initial searches of the harbour area have not found anything, but that their searches are continuing. Those who were with Liam at the weekend have a simple message.
It's totally out of character, and that's why we need people's help. Don't assume that this is just a guy on a night out that just not come back because he's on some kind of mad night out. That's not him.
Police in Hamburg will now also seek the public's help as the search for Liam intensifies. Ian McInnes, reporting Scotland in Inverness.
Efforts will be made to retrieve the bodies of 2 missing fishermen who died after their boat capsized on Loch Fyne in January. Marine accident investigators say they've now completed their survey of the wreck and don't intend to recover the vessel. The Scottish Government says it will now fund any efforts to recover the bodies. Graham Stewart reports.
Tarbert, a small, tight-knit fishing community, still coming to terms with the sinking of a local prawn fishing boat in Loch Fyne nearly 4 weeks ago. The bodies of skipper Duncan McDougall and Chemik Kracek are thought to still be on the Nancy Glen, which now lies nearly a mile below the surface. But marine accident investigators say that now they've completed their underwater survey of the wreck, they don't intend to raise it. However, the Scottish Government says it will now work with salvage experts to see if there's any way that the vessel can be lifted and the bodies recovered.
Every day the families wake up, look out onto the Loch Fyne beside Tarbert, and look out directly onto where the vessel is lying at 140 metres below the surface. And we think that in those exceptional circumstances, it's our duty in the Scottish Government to carry out this operation and retrieve the bodies if it is practically possible so to do.
The fishing community had already raised more than £300,000 to recover the vessel through online appeals. Now that the Scottish Government has agreed to fund the recovery, that money can be used elsewhere.
What we assume will happen is that it will go to the families. What we have to remember is we have 4 children, 2 widows and a survivor who's unlikely to go back to sea for a good long while if he ever does. So we're hoping that that money can go to them and help them and help build a future. They've lost their loved ones and this will never repay it, but it's at least the loss of an earner. They have some kind of financial security for the future.
The Scottish Government says the salvage operation won't be straightforward, but if the bodies can be found, it will hopefully bring some closure to the victims' families. Graham Stewart, reporting Scotland.
The UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has been campaigning in the Borders, saying the economy is failing people right across Scotland. However, Mr Corbyn's appearance has come during a race relations row which is engulfing his party here, with calls for tougher action on those who use inappropriate language. Well, our political correspondent Andrew Kerr is in Pennycook in Midlothian, where Mr Corbyn is about to address supporters. Andrew.
Jackie, good evening from this Miners' Welfare Club in Pennycook. Jeremy Corbyn has just arrived in that silver people carrier there. Just this second, he's using the Westminster parliamentary break to go on a campaigning tour of Scotland. He began that tour in Selkirk today, where he sampled the local delicacy as Selkirk Bannock. But his main message here in Pennycook today to the Labour supporters will be that the economy isn't working for the people of Scotland. He's saying it's a rigged system. He's saying it's a system that's pushing more than 250,000 children into poverty. And he says that the Scottish Government is being too timid in its efforts to change that. Of course, the SNP hit back though and actually say, well, that Mr Corbyn is the man who can stop, as they call it, a hard Tory Brexit and the possible economic consequences of that.
And Andrew, I mentioned the race relations row. Could you give us the background to this? And has Mr Corbyn been saying anything about it?
Yes, Jackie, you remember, of course, that Anna Sarwar, who ran to be the leader of Scottish Labour, Richard Leonard, of course, won that campaign. He alleged that racist comments were made to him by a Labour councillor. The councillor denies that. And then just last week, we had the row over Hugh Gaffney, the Scottish Labour MP, who made racist and homophobic comments. Now, Mr Gaffney was disciplined by Labour by sending him on an equalities training course, but many people have said, opposition parties have said, that it's simply not enough. The Scottish Government Minister, for example, Hamza Youssef, was saying that actually Mr Gaffney should seriously consider his position, the feeling there that Labour isn't doing enough to tackle that type of behaviour. Labour are investigating that, of course, just now at the moment. But I think this raises another question that the SNP have mentioned as well. Who, in fact, is in control of Labour? If a councillor is being suspended, of course, that's to do with Richard Leonard, the Scottish Labour leader, but Hugh Gaffney, the Labour MP, isn't suspended. Who is in control of Scottish Labour? Is it Richard Leonard or is it Jeremy Corbyn? A couple of big questions there, but I think Mr Corbyn won't be picking up on those issues when he addresses the supporters in Pennycook tonight. Jackie.
Andrew Kerr, thank you very much. MSPs are calling for more action to tackle homelessness and rough sleeping. A Holyrood committee has suggested we copy an approach taken in Finland. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
At 17, Simone Smith was pregnant with her daughter Lily when she left care and became homeless. She was repeatedly moved between temporary accommodation in the Glasgow area, all of which was unsuitable.
I kept getting moved place to place, which wasn't very stable for me and my child. Then eventually got put into supported accommodation, but that didn't turn out well because somebody broke in and assaulted me. So then my social worker moved me into another homelessness unit, which wasn't really acceptable because that was full of like people with drug addictions and alcohol. So it wasn't really a good place for me, being around all that stuff.
People are most likely to become homeless because a relationship has broken down. But there are many causes or contributory factors: domestic abuse, drug and alcohol misuse, financial problems. Successive governments have tried to tackle homelessness, and although the number of applications for help has been trending downwards, it remains a persistent problem. In the year to September 2017, there were almost 35,000 homeless applications to councils across Scotland, slightly more than in the previous 12 months. Applications were down in 14 council areas, including Glasgow and Edinburgh, but they were up in 18, including the city of Aberdeen, where the rise was sharpest.
After I left foster care, I became homeless numerous times.
Simone gave evidence to Holyrood's year-long homelessness inquiry, which has recommended that Scotland adopts Finland's approach.
The most vulnerable people in society are given a permanent tenancy at the first time of asking, and wraparound care such as drug and alcohol workers and mental health workers and community care workers are put in place to help people sustain that tenancy. That works really quite well in Finland. Why not in Scotland?
In Finland, the Housing First scheme avoids putting vulnerable people in temporary accommodation. So should we make that our priority too?
What we will need to do here is to look at how we adapt the Housing First model to work for Scotland. We need to learn from the Finns, but we need to adapt to suit Scotland's circumstances and the needs of Scotland's people.
Simone and her daughter now have somewhere permanent to call home. But there are many others, including some rough sleepers, in desperate need. Glenn Campbell reporting, Scotland, Glasgow.
Taxpayers will foot the £6 million bill for replacing cladding panels on 2 new Glasgow hospitals. Cladding, similar to that used on the Grenfell Tower, is to be removed from the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital and the Royal Hospital for Children. NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde has confirmed the Scottish Government will fund the works, which are expected to be completed over the next 12 months. A number of French rugby players were questioned by police in Edinburgh after reports of a late-night sexual assault following yesterday's Six Nations match at Murrayfield. The team's return flight to Paris was delayed this morning at Edinburgh Airport. However, Police Scotland confirmed that after speaking to a number of potential witnesses, officers established that no crime had been committed and no arrests were made. Up to 370 jobs could go at Aberdeen City Council in a bid to save more than £10 million in the next financial year. BBC Scotland understands this could just be the start of job losses at the council. Well, Rebecca Curran is at the headquarters tonight. Rebecca, has the council said if any of these job losses will be compulsory?
Well, Jackie, the Council's Conservative Labour ruling administration says it will stick to its policy of no compulsory redundancies. But doubt has already been cast tonight on how realistic that is. This is a large number of jobs that they are looking to lose. There's 370 posts could go, and that includes 140 vacant positions, all in a bid to save more than £10 million. But this could just be the start of potential job losses here at Aberdeen City Council. BBC Scotland understands that a report conducted by a private consultant is circulating the council privately, and it suggests that the workforce could have significant reductions in the coming years. So is this a sign of things to come?
It's not the case at the moment. That will also depend on what our budget settlement going forward is going to be from the Scottish Government. It's very challenging times. No one would deny that in terms of our budget settlement that we're getting from the Scottish Government, being the lowest funded council in Scotland. So times are hard, but we'll do everything we can to reduce that number.
The number itself is a consequence of the operating model which the administration are trying to push into force at this moment in time. Despite the rhetoric that we're hearing from the suspended Labour members, they're getting led by the nose by the Conservatives at this moment in time. The ability to achieve these numbers is definitely in question. Over the course of the last year, the council has had a voluntary severance policy, and they've not been able to meet their target. So whether that can be met in the coming year again is up for debate.
And Rebecca, we heard mention of 9 suspended Labour councillors there. The thinking is that how this is dealt with could have an implication on them.
Yes, that's absolutely right, Jackie. The Labour councillors were suspended last year by the then leader Kezia Dugdale after they ignored orders not to go into coalition with the Conservatives. Now, at the time, Ms Dugdale said that the party couldn't do a deal that would result in further austerity for local communities. Now, so far, Aberdeen Labour Group leader Jenny Ling has not responded to our requests for an interview, but the party's Scottish Executive Committee has already said that this matter is under review until the administration set their budget. So it remains to be seen whether or not the threat of job losses could harm the group's chances of getting back into the party.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. It's 16 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. A search is continuing for a man who's gone missing while on a stag weekend in Germany. 29-year-old Liam Colgan was last seen in a bar in Hamburg in the early hours of Saturday. And still to come,
it's not an easy one.
Scotland back to winning ways after its victory over France in the Six Nations. Charge him or release him. The call from the family of a Scottish man who spent 100 days behind bars in India. Jagtar Singh Johal from Dumbarton is accused of aiding and abetting the murders of several right-wing Hindu leaders. Mr Johal says he's innocent and was tortured in the days after his arrest, a claim the Indian authorities deny. Katie Hunter reports.
A grandmother and father longing to see their loved one. Jagtar Singh Johal's family held a news conference this morning, 100 days after he was arrested in India. The 31-year-old from Dumbarton has regularly appeared in court in Punjab, accused of aiding and abetting the murders of Hindu leaders. Allegations he denies.
Jaggy needs to be brought back to his family. He needs to be where he's been brought up, where he spent all his life. He's not done anything wrong. If he had done anything wrong, the Indian authorities would have charged him by now. 100 days have elapsed and no charge sheet has been filed or given to him.
Jagtar Singh Johal went to India in October to get married. He was arrested on the 4th of November. The Sikh activist has previously contributed to this website, which honours people the Indian government describe as militant. But his family say that isn't illegal. And an international human rights organisation says there are a number of concerning aspects about his case.
At times he hasn't had any access to his lawyer, and he still hasn't been able to meet with British consular staff in private. So it's crucial that the UK government puts its full weight behind the case to ensure that he is protected from any further torture or ill treatment.
Jagtar Singh Johal was born and bred in the West End of Glasgow. He moved here to Dumbarton 17 years ago. The Foreign Office says it is supporting Mr Johal and his family, but the local MP says the government isn't doing enough.
Jaggy's family require their fuller support and tackling the accusations in public in India. Without any charges, there is no way to defend Jaggy. And literally, if there are to be no charges, then the Indian authorities have to go on with it and let him go.
But there's no prospect of that happening anytime soon. The Indian authorities say they're following due process, but Jagtar's family fear his case could drag on for months, if not years. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
Police investigating the death of a pensioner in a hit and run are trying to find a new witness who may have vital information. John Ogston died late on New Year's Day after he was run over by a vehicle in Dundee. Detectives now believe he was struck on another part of the road near his home. They're trying to trace a passerby seen on CCTV footage moments after the accident.
We do see on CCTV what looks like a male walking down Mains Road, and he continues all the way down past Bain Square and onto Dens Road, where he's then lost. I would appeal for that person to come forward. Now, they're not in any way involved, but they must have seen the vehicle that was involved with John as they walked past.
NHS Scotland has launched a campaign to increase the number of consultant-grade radiologists. 9 health boards are teaming up to fill over 30 vacancies through targeted advertising across the globe. At the same time, £4 million is being invested in a programme to improve patient services alongside increased specialist radiology training places. New figures show optimism in Scottish business has hit its highest level in more than 3 years. The private sector saw greater staffing levels and a return to growth in January compared with the previous month. The Bank of Scotland's latest PMI survey shows the expansion comes as confidence reached a 43-month high. The funeral has taken place in Cork of the former Celtic and Manchester United player Liam Miller. The Republic of Ireland international died on Friday at the age of 36 after suffering from pancreatic cancer. Former teammates Aidan McGeady and Stephen McManus attended the funeral mass in his home village. Martin O'Neill and the ex-Manchester United captain Roy Keane, who's also from Cork, were among the mourners. Scotland's Elise Christie goes for Olympic gold at the Winter Olympics in South Korea tomorrow morning. Christie from Livingston races in the quarterfinals, semi-finals and then final, if all goes to plan, in the 500-metre short track speed skating. Well, meanwhile, Team GB's hopes of curling glory rests with all Scottish teams, both in the women and men's events. Eve Muirhead, who won bronze 4 years ago, will skip the ladies' team and has been explaining how her family will be watching the action.
Unfortunately, my dad, someone has to kind of keep an eye on the farm at home, don't they? It's not just a country you can just pop home, is it? So he's unfortunately at home, but he'll be watching every single game and of course keeping in touch every day.
So he's going to be up in the middle of the night watching on the TV?
No doubt, I know. My little brother Thomas, his girlfriend Lucy, was saying how she set up a TV in the lambing shed already, so I'm sure that every game will be getting watched.
Now here's another game that was watched. With their Six Nations campaign back on track after victory over France, Scotland believe they're capable of beating any team in the world at Murrayfield. Well, that's the view of scrum half Greg Laidlaw anyway, who took centre stage to guide the team to victory on his first international start in a year. More from Andy Burke.
The little man for the big occasion. Injuries and line selection kept him out of the Scotland team for a year, but Greg Laidlaw is very much back. With the Scots staring down the barrel of a doomed campaign, he stepped up to breathe life into his country's Six Nations challenge.
There's all been penalties in the second, and there have been 6 from the boots of Greg Laidlaw.
It's brilliant to be back out there. I think we've done everybody proud, including ourselves, and sort of rejuvenated each other, ourselves from poor performance last week. So it was tremendous to turn it around, and after a sticky first half, really to finish really strongly, showed how fit we are, and I thought we played really well in the last 20 minutes.
The first 20 minutes were tricky, the French flying out the traps through Teddy Thomas. But as the match wore on, Scotland slowly took control, Laidlaw with 22 points, guiding his team home.
He was outstanding. His experience told everything, and his kicking was exemplary, but his game management was something else as well. He was a linchpin between the forwards and the backs. I must say that experience gave Scotland a confidence and a structure that allowed Scotland to play with a game plan and a tempo, but it really was a masterful performance.
Well, Laidlaw's teammates from 1 to 15 will have to reach such heights again if they are to topple their next opponent, England.
That's going to be a huge challenge. We were playing arguably the best team in the world over the last 2 years, given the amount of games they've won. A team that's very consistent, very tough to beat, that have shown that they find a way to win more often than not. And we've got to give our best game. We've got to really put them under pressure for 80 minutes, and we'll see what happens after that.
Scotland have won their last 5 home matches in this championship. A 6th against England would throw the Six Nations wide open. Andy Burke, reporting Scotland.
Well, staying with rugby, one of the country's most recognisable sporting voices is to retire after 46 years in the business. The BBC's rugby union correspondent Ian Robertson, who himself played for Scotland, will hang up his microphone this autumn.
There's 35 seconds to go. This is the one. It's coming back for Jonny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. Yes! It's up. It's over. He's done it. Jonny Wilkinson is England's hero yet again. And there's no time for Australia to come back. England have just won the World Cup.
In case you didn't recognise it, that was arguably his finest moment, a Scot commentating with such passion on England winning the Rugby World Cup back in 2003. Let's get the weather now from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you.
Hello there. Well, it was a chilly day today, but plenty of sunshine around. Lovely picture from one of our weather watchers taken in the capital a little earlier. And whilst it's a quiet start to the night, there is change on the way. You can see this cloud building, winds strengthening from the southwest, gales at times around the west coast, and rain moving inland. But for many central and eastern parts, dry, clear, cold, frosty, a few icy patches. However, that system likely to cause some issues tomorrow, so we have this Met Office yellow be aware warning for rain, sleet and snow, because perhaps some tricky periods on the roads for tomorrow morning's commute. In fact, let's take a closer look around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And towards sea level, a mixture of rain and sleet, but even moderately high ground will have some fairly significant snow, and it's mainly focused in the west and southwest. You'll notice further east it's reasonably dry by this point, including in towards Edinburgh, up towards Aberdeen. But further west, high road routes, significant snow, difficult conditions on the roads, some disruption to travel. Rain pushing in towards Orkney and heading towards Shetland later. Now, through the course of the morning and towards the afternoon, that system will slowly edge its way eastwards, giving a spell of cloud, rain and snow for more eastern areas. Meanwhile, in the west, it improves. It dries up and it brightens up. The wind's easing down and backing westerly. But by mid-afternoon, in the east, it's still with us. Rain towards Shetland, wintry flurries through parts of Orkney. Across parts of Caithness and Sutherland, reasonably dry and bright. But Aberdeenshire, Perthshire, down towards Angus, Fife, and the Lothians, the border, still cloudy, still some rain and snow. Again, the snow mainly on higher ground. In the west, brighter, drier, lighter winds, still cold, and wintry showers there, pushing in across the Western Isles. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, well, that system finally clears away. It's then dry, clear and cold. Quiet, but it doesn't last. You can see another weather system arriving as we go into Wednesday, and we do it all over again with rain and some snow. And much stronger winds on Wednesday, actually. Gales almost anywhere, really. Perhaps severe gales at times around the west coast. Likely to see some disruption on the travel front, especially for the ferries. And it will be another cold afternoon, 4 to 6 Celsius at best. Not much improvement for the end of the week either. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Christopher. And now just back to our top story of the missing Inverness man in Germany. The brother of Liam Colgan has just flown back from Hamburg. He was there for a stag weekend that his brother organised, and he said it was a very difficult decision to come home.
Was it a difficult decision to come home?
Well, of course, yeah. I feel I should probably still be there, but I don't know what I'd be doing, so I'll probably end up back out there as soon as I can think of what we can do next.
That's it from us. Good night.